To Jeff Kananga live here at Citizen Television. We're asking you the question, do you support the 2/3 gender rule? Check this out. Surprise, no surprise. Yes, 20%. No, an overwhelming 80% of you say no, you don't support the gender rule. Folks, Mheshimiwa Alex Koske, Mheshimiwa Jennifer Shamalla, any surprise there?
No.
No
No
surprise?
No surprise.
Good Lord.
No.
I mean, she said initially that she already felt that the bill would not go through.
Yeah, and I said tomorrow it
and
won't, yeah.
it was clear to me as well that the bill would not go through.
Yeah.
And as I said before, this was the same bill brought in 2016, and at that time, the mood overwhelmingly was against it, and they bring the exact same thing that did not pass then. So how do they expect it to pass?
Definition of insanity.
Definition of insanity.
Doing the same thing over and over. Expecting a different result. That's pathetic, huh? That's pathetic. But you know what? So let's face it, chances are there will be a referendum in the next few years. So what would be ideal? Reduce the number of constituencies? Would that make sense?
Yes, reduction of the number of constituencies and a formula where you still have, because we must have representation across the different sectors. We cannot leave.
So it's quota.
We cannot leave a 50% of Kenyans out, which are the women, and say, you know, and this argument, let women vote for themselves, is because that's the patriarchal system that we come from. It's harder for women.
So affirmative action.
So affirmative, because that's what happens in societies which the United States has had it. We should have it. It's only a stop-gap measure. Even this particular bill talked about 20 years and extension for 10 years. Affirmative actions are only stop-gap measures until societies are conditioned to that.
How did Rwanda manage it then? Rwanda is what? I think 56% women. I mean, one of the highest in Africa, I think.
It's 61%.
There you go.
Yeah. But actually, we were discussing that actually, you know, one of the sad things about the Rwanda situation is that it has its roots in the genocide. Because after the genocide, there was actually a very large number of men who died in that genocide, and subsequent to that, or displaced, and subsequent to that, a lot of women, you know, took up the role, and that's why you have a very a situation now where a lot of the women are in Parliament. So that was one of the good things that have come out from that unfortunate event, but that is a peculiar case. Generally speaking, it's not normal to have. I mean, it's not the norm in East Africa at the moment to have that. It might be the case in future because progress is being made. We in Kenya at the moment we're at 22% in Parliament. It's possible that figure will increase, but there is no point to force it through this kind of legislation.
Right. Or maybe this formula.
Or this
particular formula.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, switching gears again. You spoke about corruption earlier on, Mheshimiwa. Is the president, is the government winning the war on corruption?
Well, it's the positives have been clearly the war of corruption can't be won in a day or in a month, because until we get a conviction in the courts, and I mean a high-profile conviction, then we can say we're winning the war. Has the war begun, and are we on the right trajectory? I would say yes. From what we've seen in the last couple of months with the DCIO, the new DCIO Kinoti, the new DPP Nordin Haji, I would say yes. And I get the sense that they're not rushing things to court. Yeah. I get the sense that they have very strong teams doing, you know, because you can only secure a conviction if your investigations are thorough.
Yes.
And if your case is solid.
Nordin Haji was on Newsnight last night with Hussein Mohammed.
Yes, I missed that. I didn't watch that.
He actually said he feels the frustration of that, the big names get arrested, and before you know it, they're walking the streets. But and he has the evidence, he has everything, but he feels, he feels so frustrated.
Jeff, again, we have to uphold the Constitution, the right to bail, the presumption of innocence. Now, that's another thing. People are charged with murder, and on social media, you're called a murderer. You're not a murderer. You have not yet been convicted. Let's be careful with the sort of language we use, because actually sometimes truth is stranger than fiction. Now, that is the fact. And the bail terms, an accused person has a right to bail, and I will always stand up for that right as an advocate of the High Court of Kenya, as a legislator, and it is in our constitution. What the frustration is, I think, is that to vary the bail terms. I also think that if you're an accused, to go running around acting like nothing has happened, there must be some sense of not shame, but some sense of, coming down a bit and lying low and sorting out your case and saying things, very honorably. On the other hand, some people will argue, why should I step aside when I am innocent? Yeah. Another person will say, I'll step aside and fight this case and prove my innocence.
That doesn't happen in Kenya.
But the problem is the fast tracking. We need the courts to fast track these cases. I appreciate and I understand, and I know that the courts have been overwhelmed, and I do understand and appreciate the fact that they now have special designated courts to deal with these matters. So until and unless a Kenyan sees a conviction, they will not believe that I think they're beginning to understand there is some hope. There is a light at the end of the tunnel, that this war on corruption has finally begun.
Mheshimiwa, do you agree?
I mean, I agree completely with the sentiment in terms of what we would like to see is high-profile convictions. I also agree that we seem to have people who have the right ideas at heart. I'm happy with the DPP and the action that he seems to be taking and the initiatives he's taking. And we are fully supporting that. I don't think there's anybody in any sector that doesn't support it. And if there's anything that he's saying he's frustrating him, that he wishes to have happen, I would urge him to bring it to Parliament, because I think every MP would be more than happy to give him any piece of legislation or anything that he requires in order to achieve a result. However, I would also wish to ask him that, if I could give advice, I wish he could, instead of spreading himself thin and going all over the place, I wish he could pick specific sectors which seem to be doing the most damage and work on those sectors. One of them, and I want to bring this in, is the issue of the maize, because this is a big thing in this country at the moment. Yeah. We have what is almost a crisis. Where I come from, farmers are crying, they're suffering. We do not have a situation where, we have a situation where the government is saying on the one hand that they would like to have food security as one of the big four, but on the other hand, the area that produces the breadbasket of Kenya, almost zero resources are being pumped to buy that maize. Several times they've been saying that they will release the money. The amount required to release to pay farmers for previously is about 2 billion shillings. It's not, in the grand scheme of things, a lot of money. Yeah. But this money is not being made available deliberately. And the farmers have asked and asked and asked that please pay us this money. It's not even a favor. The money, the maize has already been delivered.
To go you one further, the president even directed his CS.
Correct.
Said pay the farmers.
Pay the farmers. And how do you intend to have food security when the same farmers who are supposed to be growing maize for you are now so frustrated, they're almost going out of business? And what we are saying is that just pay them and allow them to be able to continue producing, because once they stop, we will not be able to get them to restart again. And what will happen is that we will now end up having to import virtually all our food. And we can't do that as a country. We already have a very high import bill. And if we now have to add from importing oil, importing other goods, to now importing our food, then we'll be in a very critical situation.
And then forget about Agenda 4 and food security.
Yes,
forget about
we will forget about food security. We won't have food security. So what we need to have is we urge them to please, first of all, pay the farmers. Secondly, give farmers a fair price for the maize that is there, because that's actually what my colleagues and other MPs have been asking for. Let's give them a fair price so that we can be able to see them continue to do the farming in the area. And what I said is that what I said about the DPP, what is going on at the NCPB is criminal. And I wish he could pick that sector and prosecute the people responsible, because there are people responsible. And they need to be told that what you're doing is sabotaging the country. You're going to have a country that is not food secure. So those actions are so serious. They are actually criminal. And my advice to DPP, act on that. If you can even just focus on one thing or another thing, then the whole corruption issue will start to go down, because they'll see certain sectors of the economy let's just make sure we do the right thing, because if we don't, somebody will come after us and make sure that we go to jail. And that's what I wish he could do.
And for the longest time, cartels ruled these outfits, these organizations.
Yes, they still do.
And they still do. They'd rather import maize from Mexico.
Yes.
You know,
and I want to agree, you just simply can't play. Food security is national security. You just can't, you can't delink the two at all. Yes.
What a shame, huh? What a shame, because this destroys agenda of the big four.
Yes.
But what we're saying is that I don't want us to be pessimistic. We have to have hope. And the question was, do we, the war on corruption, are we winning the war on corruption? I see light at the end of the tunnel. I think we're in November. By February, depending on how long these cases, I can't remember the timelines. If they have solid cases, they will secure these convictions.
Are there any sacred cows in this war on corruption? Are there any sacred cows? Do you see any? Like untouchables, if you will?
Well, yes, clearly they are. And that's also part of the frustration. Because you can see that there are certain people who have done certain things and nothing's happening. And that's why we would wish to see the DPP try and take certain clear action against that. And as I said, there are certain sectors of the economy that are so critical that you would want everybody to know that you cannot mess with that sector. And if you do, you'll be in trouble. Yeah,
like the don't-go areas. Okay. Opposition in Parliament, guys. Is there any opposition? Much more?
Oh, tons of opposition in Parliament.
Yeah.
Didn't you see the VAT? There's lots of opposition in Parliament. I think our idea of opposition is fighting and negative, toxic politics. There's nothing wrong when leaders talk to each other. At all. There's nothing wrong, especially when it's for the good of the country. And opposition is not combative. Opposition is it's when you what is the word I'm looking for?
Healthy.
But constructive criticism. Yes. But just screaming and shouting for the sake of screaming and shouting and making noise is not an opposition. It's when you raise issues. I think what we're doing now it's not opposing. It's, like I said, constructive criticism. I think that's what the kind of opposition we should have as Kenyans.
Mheshimiwa?
I agree. What we're having now is constructive criticism. I mean, I am in Jubilee, and I'm not saying these things because I'm completely opposed to the Jubilee. What we are giving is constructive criticism in terms of whether it is the maize sector, or whether it's a comments to do with borrowing, whether it's a comments to do with the gender bill, and other things. These things are being given to the government in a constructive way. So that is healthy. And I also think that the handshake that happened is actually a good thing, because it has removed a lot of toxic and ill feeling that was there, a bad environment. What we have now is a fairly good environment where progress can be made. And what we would like to do is hopefully sustain this for as long as possible, because obviously we all know that as we approach the next election cycle, it'll become harder and harder to achieve progress. So what we want is, at this point, to be able to have an honest conversation about what we want to do in the country and where we want to take the country. So I'm happy with that.
So, but you still don't agree on the gender bill, right? Even though you're all... Okay. My wife has never tweeted on this show, never messaged.
Okay.
Today she does.
Really?
She has. And she says, talk about Ethiopia. Ethiopia, 50% of women are parliamentarians. And they just appointed a woman president. Right?
Yes.
And a woman CJ, by the way.
Ethiopia.
Yes.
So I think it's in the national psyche of the Ethiopian people. And having observed them, our politics is extremely localized politics. It's not national politics. It's not a patriotic type of politics. It's not, and this is over the years. When you said we're going to talk about our parents, and I was going to say that I'm so grateful and thankful, and that I was brought up by a Kenyan they were really nationalists, and they taught us to be nationalists. And over the years, we have retreated to these cocoons, and when these cocoons they can be tribal, and then they further get segregated into, like you said, this women, men. Whereas the Ethiopians are, I would say, they're far more nationalistic than we are as a people.
Okay.
Yes.
Wow. Wow, we have a
I
long...
think. I could be wrong, but just on the, yes.
All right, so switching gears once again, and we've been getting a lot of messages, Mheshimiwa Alex Koskei, about your shoes. They say you have like many pairs of this same shoe.
And how do they know that?
That's all they see you wearing in Parliament.
Yeah, well.
What is it with this shoe?
Nothing. I think I'm not a particularly good shopper.
So, they're interesting shoes.
It's interesting the things that people notice.
Can you
I mean,
can you imagine?
Yes.
Very interesting.
I have some friends at Hugo Boss, Mheshimiwa. I'll introduce you to. Okay. Your dad. How long has he been dead?
He passed on in 2014.
Yes,
Yes,
it's not
he'd
that long ago.
Yeah, not long ago. Not long ago. Not long ago.
You corrected me during the break. You said he wasn't a minister. He was assistant minister.
Yes.
And PS.
PS.
And MP where?
And member Shinyalu.
Shinyalu.
Yes. Well, yes. Yes.
What would you think of his firstborn?
I think he would be like, well, I'm not surprised. You know?
Yeah.
I'm very much his daughter, and it's a what, you know, having been, it's a year now to date, and it's such a humbling experience. It's such a wonderful experience, really, to be walking in his footsteps.
Are you enjoying it?
Yeah, oh, tremendously.
Really?
To serve the people of Kenya.
And to be in that house.
Yes, and to be in that house, because it's the work that goes into it. And I don't know, and people may not know this, but the engine of the house is the committees. And actually we spend all the mornings that all the times we're not in Parliament, we're actually in committees, going through legislation, listening to petitions, poring over documents. And it has just enhanced my life, but it's also such a privilege to serve and to be, you know, and yes, my father would be very proud of me, and I love it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Henry Koskei, he's probably watching you right now.
Yes.
And you know, he was very shy of the media.
Was
the
he?
amount of times I tried to get an interview with him and couldn't. But, you know, I guess this is a new generation.
Yes.
When you first stood in Mgwen,
yes,
is this something a decision you made yourself? You said, you know what, I want to do this for my people.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. It is something that I first decided.
No regrets?
No regrets, no. I'm quite happy with everything. I mean, obviously, there are things that you wish you could achieve, but I think that's the nature of politics. There's always frustrations, and you would wish things happen this way.
And you stood again.
Yes,
in
and
17, you stood again.
Yes, I stood again in 2017.
So obviously you must be having fun. I mean, there must be something about that place.
Well, you know, politics is politics. Yeah,
it's a calling more than fun.
Is it a calling?
I wouldn't describe politics as fun.
Okay.
Because it's really more of a calling.
So when they turn around and call you pigs.
Yeah, it's not fun.
I mean, that must hurt.
Of course it hurts.
Right? You know what?
It really hurts. And you know, I've decided I'm going to keep, I think that private companies and organizations had better start, because there's people who are abusive on social media and everywhere and refer to people as slay queens and whatever. We should have a database of people like that, because you cannot, you know, abuse people ad nauseam anyway and get away with it. You just can't. You know, some of these people, I would like to meet them here face to face and say, you know what, so you say you call members of Parliament or nominated members of Parliament slay queens, and you call members of Parliament. Why do you call us MPs? Do you know what they go through? Do you know how much they give out in donations, you know, weekly? You know it, isn't it? You know, constantly your phone ringing and what they try to do. It's really not acceptable. But it was deliberate. It was designed by a particular group of people in civil society to dehumanize them. And then you've never heard them marching up outside the judiciary and complaining that judges earn X number of shillings, or outside the executive. Why are you picking on parliamentarians? What is your rationale and logic? Yes, it's very painful.
Well,
it hurts.
You know, I haven't seen any slay queen judges either.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Back to the question we've been asking you. Do you support the two-thirds gender rule? Guess what? It's going down.
Yes.
19% say yes, 81 say no. Goodness. Wow, this is shocking, but I guess you guys aren't surprised. Okay, some SMSs or tweets, Monica?
We completely...
Do we have... Okay, SMSs. Ashok from Kisumu says, I oppose the two-thirds gender rule. There is neither rule in Kenya that prevent any women from vying for any position, nor any position that is secluded for men only. However, women already have the post of women rep, which is only meant for women participants and not men. Okay. People are very passionate about this. Nyawera from Nairobi says, gender diversity in government means diversity in thought, which improves policies, formulation, and problem solving. So yes to the two-thirds gender rule. Okay. Kamuri Gashoki says, I think the two-thirds gender rule can be actual in all other places of work like ministries and parastatals and any other formation that basically hires professionals. But I strictly feel that for the political position, there should be no reservation. Whoever needs it faces the electorate and seeks their votes. That's democracy. Wow. People are just so... Kiviatu Salim from Titonde says, women are more than men in this nation. Why don't they vote in more women instead of blaming men for not supporting the bill? He has a point. There's 50
Well, that's socialization, yeah. Maybe we'll consider that movement.
Yes, Vic says, yes, I think this bill should pass. This is the 21st century. Only insecure men oppose this. More women in parliament will give them... The country is still deep in corruption. Let's give our women a chance to represent us. Who knows? Things might happen for us. Okay. Motemi, you say, no women. No. Women say what men can do, women can do best. So they should compete with men in election.
Whoa.
Auma from Athi River says, if these women want to be in parliament, they should vie for the seats as their counterparts. Nothing comes on a silver platter anyway. By the way, I think these women are portraying themselves as weak beings, yet they are always preaching equality. Wow, 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 wow. Goodness. Miano, these are tweets now. Miano Morris says, every individual is equal under the law. It's unfair to give a particular gender preferential treatment.
It's affirmative action.
Jennifer, you're losing here.
I know.
Abdirashid Abdullahi says, I don't support the gender rule. Let men and women battle for positions on merit and not gender favoritism and other underhand dealings.
Yeah, I know.
Shikali Clinton says, Kenya is not a patriarchal society. We live in a symbiotic manner with these women. They must be given little space in government to give in their input. It may help somewhere in the country's development. Whoa. Symbiotic, he says. Vincent Mongare, the two-thirds gender rule must fall. 55% of Kenyan voters are women, and they can't vote themselves leadership because women in this country look at their colleagues in leadership and don't see a reason for having a woman in such positions. Wow. Jose Felix says, I don't support the two-thirds gender rule. Women should fight to get elected just like their male counterparts. What if one day more women get elected to parliament? Will we have special seats for men? Yes. Such laws don't even exist in the USA.
Yes, because it says not more than 2/3.
Men reps.
Yes, that's if it were like that, then you would ensure that 1/3 of those seats were for men. But having said that, I would love a conversation where we'd ask how many of them voted for the Constitution of 2010.
In 2010, right?
Yeah.
All right, folks, we're going to wind up this show. Final thoughts going forward. We'll start with you, Mheshimiwa Koske. Final thoughts going forward.
Generally? As a
everything.
country?
No. Talk about your bill. Talk about debt. Talk about everything.
Yeah, well, okay. I mean, the biggest thing that we need to look at the moment is the issue of the debt. So I certainly hope that we can have a conversation about this. And I certainly hope that we will be able to have a broad-based consensus in Parliament and also outside Parliament and be able to cap the debt, have a reasonable figure, and be able to live within our means. Because the biggest problem that we're having right now is that we're living beyond our means, and that's going to come to bite us later. Even this gender bill, it's being pushed by people who are not really thinking that that extra amount of money that will be required to pay for these extra women MPs would be us living beyond our means. So let's try and live within our means. Let's try and have an honest conversation about this and then move forward.
Diana Ross.
My final thoughts are that a year ago today, last year, was a very heavy, dark period for Kenya. The election had been nullified. We were going to another election We lost trillions of shillings in that election year. And we're sitting here today, and life goes on. And next year, I hope we will focus on really more the economy and less politicking.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's a guy called Shamalla. Doesn't particularly watch the show, but he says, today I was glued to JK Live because this young chap, Alex Koske, brilliant, articulating issues soberly. Just wow.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Micah Pearl says, we need more young leaders like Mr. Koske. Wow, okay, these people are loving you, eh? So would you run for another seat, like, you know, governor or senator, or we go?
We're not really. I mean, as I said, one of the problems that she just said, the problem that now is that too many now they're focusing on 2022 for politics. So let's focus on economy and other things. Yeah.
Oh, nice. Good answer. Good answer. What about you? Would you stand in Shinyalu?
Again, to echo what he said, let's
in
concentrate.
Shinyalu?
Why not?
Would they vote for you?
Why not? I ran in Shinyalu. I lost badly, but it was a by-election. but why not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
Would I run? I don't know yet. I think like there's time. We need to focus on other things besides politics for the moment. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Guys, thanks so much for your time.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Thank you.
Keep doing what you do.
Thank you.
And,
Thank you for having us.
And keep talking about these things. You know, I always say the moment we stop talking is the moment we start fighting. But it's good at least we're talking about this. And thanks so much for being a part of this show, folks. Keep tweeting at Kananga Jeff, at Citizen TV Kenya. The hashtag is JK Live. You know, every Wednesday, the show to watch is that one with the 3 letters on the keyboard that follow each other. JK Live. Tomorrow morning from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m., join Professor Hamo and myself on the hottest breakfast show in all of Africa. Hashtag Jeff and Hamo on Hot. In the meantime, thanks so much for being a part of the show. Good night. Good luck. And God bless our parliamentarians. Diana Ross.
Thank you.
Well done.